A Half Dozen Things is a podcast for business owners and professionals just like you. Whether you're an underdog hungry for success or you're already smashing it but want to continue to level up, we're here each week for you to get insight and learning from the very best in the business. No fluff, no BS, and no self-proclaimed gurus talking about how easy business or life is. Just real, frank, and raw conversations. Hello everyone, and welcome to A Half Dozen Things podcast. I'm joined today by Lee Martin from TOOJAYS. Hi Lee, thanks for joining us.
No problem, pleasure.
And we're still on lockdown. It's 9 a.m, so I find myself in the garden. For those that are watching on YouTube, you can see the backdrop of the fence. The reason for that is the kids are recording at 9, so the kids will be fairly charged up by 9:30, unfortunately. So they'll be getting quite loud. And I just have got fingers crossed because my neighbour across there actually sounds like Pingu when he gets going. So hopefully he won't come outside. But yeah, welcome Lee, and thanks for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. So we're going to be talking about your half dozen things. So first of all, your first one's around knowing your goal, being clear on what your purpose is. So are you able to just sort of talk to me a bit more about that, Lee?
Yeah, sure. I think, as you well know as well, setting up your business and getting involved in business, there's so much noise out there and so many distractions. I think the temptation is to try and be the master of all trades, etc. However, if you're clear on your purpose and your goal, and as you kind of grow your business, as you develop your business, as you get your customer proposition out there, being crystal clear on knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it enables a clearer message to go out to your customers. And there's a lot of reading out there, leadership gurus, Simon Sinek talks about knowing your why. And it's right. It's all about having a clear plan. And once you have that plan in place, you're able then to subsequently check it. So going back to the plan, do, review, action principles that we've applied in our business, it enables you to revisit that goal, that plan, to make sure it's still relevant to the environment, so to your customers. And as we're experiencing at the moment, lots of change going on in the world of economy and business. So it's again an ideal opportunity to do exactly that. Just check your goal. Are you doing the right thing?
And how often do you look at your goals? Do you do them quarterly or monthly?
Yeah, it depends what the circumstances are. We as a rule, do it annually. So we reset our goals for the year, part of our plan. We have a 5-year business plan, which constantly gets reviewed every year. But in this unprecedented circumstances like we've got now, it does force you to kind of rethink them more frequently than annually. And we've just done that as an exercise about 2 or 3 weeks ago, just again to check our proposition and our intention as our goal is still relevant to our marketplace. So so there's no real time limit on it. It's just what is fit for purpose for you in business. But it is an opportunity just to make sure that you are aligning to what you intended to do as your business goal from the right outset.
Yeah, I got you. So you formed TOOJAYS 17 years ago, and you'd have had a vision for what that looked like. And how has that vision evolved over time? What was it originally, and in comparison to what it is now?
Yeah, surprisingly, that's quite scary when you say 17 years, isn't it? But surprisingly, it's not changed that much. The reason I originally got into it was probably like most people that set up their own business, was born out of frustration. So frustration that at the time I was in corporate employment, and I was finding a lot of L&D providers were not very flexible, not listening, not understanding my precise needs as a client, and just delivering off-the-shelf packages that didn't fit my purpose. So born out of that frustration was a need to do something different and to be flexible and to be adaptable and make sure that it wasn't a kind of sheep dip approach to what clients wanted. So that's still true now. I still go into clients and hear horror stories about the previous supplier would only do it their way, and when they wanted any change, there was no flexibility. So there's still people out there offering that kind of it's our way or the highway kind of approach, and that's music to my ears, because our flexibility means that we can adapt and provide customers with what they need and what they want as well.
Of course, yeah, and then that gives you the ability to sort of be agile and dynamic to sort of fit into those needs. And with regards to your clients, has your client base remained quite similar over time, or has the client base evolved who you target?
Yeah, it's kind of evolved, and again, I was asked a while ago in terms of who's your client base. Well, basically anyone, and that's such a broad brush, because anyone, be it a micro business or be it a global international company who has a need to develop their skill sets, is a potential customer to us. Be that soft skills, be that management, leadership, be that technical skills. Anyone that has a development need, team-wise, individual-wise, organizational-wise, is a potential client for us. So that has seen us cover all sectors. So public sector, private sector, international, as we say, right down to one-man bands. The flip side of that, that does make marketing quite difficult, because the different clients have different touch points. And from a marketing point of view, ensuring that you're aligning to them through the right mediums is quite difficult at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you raised marketing, especially when we talk around goals, because one of the things that I found in comparison to you, very much wet behind the ears and still very green and learning as a business, as a self-employed person and in business, and knowing my goal, knowing my customer, they're kind of two areas of that plan. And then within that plan, you have to work out how you're going to target and contact and speak to your customer, and what sort of language you're going to use and how you're going to frame that, what channels to use. And actually, if you're not really clear on your goal, I think you said earlier around being all things to all people, you have this challenge where you can just bury and sink so much money, can't you? And there's so many marketing gurus who go, hey, no, when you go and speak to them with your problem, and surprisingly enough, they've got the solution to that problem, and it's whatever product or service it is they're offering.
Yeah, I learned very early on, and this shows how long we've been in business really, but one of the first things I ever did was place an advertisement in the Yellow Pages. Like I say, it was a long time ago. I don't think anyone uses Yellow Pages anymore. But I spent a fair bit of money pasting this advertisement in the Yellow Pages, and I just sat and waited and waited and waited, and no one came to me at all. And it was pretty soon then I realised that wasn't the right avenue to go through. And it's still true today. We find that the majority of our business comes from word of mouth, networks, testimonials, social recommendations, rather than cold advertising. And that kind of links into, again, another element that people buy on trust. And if they see an advertisement, they don't know anything about you, they don't know your background, you don't know your work or your credibility, a la the Yellow Pages advert that we had, they're not going to buy into that. So in terms of marketing, we tend to focus more on the recommendations, the networks and the connections that we've had from existing clients, and leveraging that really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I did a review after our first full year of the invoices I'd made and the business that I'd made in the first year. And interestingly, and similar to you, I'd come out of a corporate background too, with similar frustrations, and I'd catered a product and a service to match that. And interestingly enough, first year, 75% of my income was from people that I already knew. They're people that already knew me and were happy to deal with me. So I find that very, very interesting. And actually, all that time I was spending money and working really, really hard on a marketing effort. And actually, potentially, I could have really focused much more on my customer and the people I knew, and actually did more with that. So, okay, brilliant, thank you. So, first one, knowing your goal. The second area we wanted to discuss was being passionate about your product or your service. So, believing in the value and the benefits of what it is that you offer. Are you able to just sort of expand on that for me, please, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, the title kind of speaks for itself a little bit, but it also follows on from the marketing aspect that you just talked about. If you don't passionately believe in your product and the benefits that it can bring about for your customers, then that will come across in how you speak, your language, how you articulate, and how you subsequently sell. And you know as well as I do, if you've got a monotone, dreary kind of salesperson in front of you that is saying, yes, my product will help you, it'll be fantastic, you're not going to buy into that, not going to buy into that at all. You've got to have some belief and some passion around what you're offering and the subsequent benefits that it can provide to those customers. And that's quite easy for me because in terms of learning and development, part of my own personal profile is that I like to help others. So if you go into psychometrics tools, I'm a blue-green in terms of SDI, but that's all about wanting to get your satisfaction from helping others. So I'm in my ideal job in terms of it ties in with my own motivational values, my products, my company, live that for me. And that's why I'm hence so passionate and knowing that we can actually add value to our customers because our products are right, they're going to be suitable, and they're of high quality, high excellence, and they will add value to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can feel the passion when you speak about it, and that's you can see why that is successful when you do speak to prospective customers, because you can see when that passion comes through, and especially with people when they come through now. And when I speak to people and I say, you know, what's your USP? What is special about what you do?
Yeah.
And I often hear, well, it's me because I do it and it's good because I do it. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that's all good, but maybe that's not going to quite wash just yet. So we need to think a bit more about what it is that's so good about what you've got. But yeah, absolutely being passionate about your product. I love what I do too, and I love helping people as well. Interesting that you mentioned Total SDI though. There's obviously lots of other profiling tools out there and what have you. What colour are you, Lee?
Yeah, so in terms of Total SDI, I report blue-green, which is interesting in itself because that goes back to the marketing thing that we talked about before. Because for those of you that know Total SDI, that subsequently means my blind spot is my red, and the red's very much about the kind of direct action, being proactive, and particularly focusing on the sales side of things. That doesn't mean that I don't sell, but it just means the way that I sell links into the blue-green, which is about the relationships, helping other people, which, as I say, goes back to the network conversations. So yeah, through my career, I've been lucky enough to get exposure to lots of different analysis tools. Like you say, there's quite a lot on the market, but that awareness, that understanding, being able to apply that back into your business and how you act and how you apply the theory into tangible concepts is quite important. So yeah, I've benefited twofold from that because it's the product that we sell, and I've also been able to apply it to ourselves in terms of how we operate and how we align ourselves.
Okay. So do you offer Total SDI, Lee? Is that the one you've chosen?
Not just the one. Yeah, we do Total SDI, but we're also MBTI, NLP. There's so many out there. Belbin, DISC. Yeah. I could reel them all off. Part of being in business for so long is that you do tend to pick up quite a lot of tools. I'm always reminding my associates of the fact that tools are great, but each of them has different aspects to it. So if you just align yourself to one tool, say for example you're picking up a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. So the more tools you have, the more flexibility you have to deliver the appropriate solution to the situation. So that's why we kind of are aware and we utilize lots of different things, because customer situations are not all the same. So sometimes they might benefit from a Total SDI, another organization may benefit from MBTI, another from DISC, etc., depending precisely on what they are needing. And that goes back to the earlier point in terms of just listening and adapting to what customers need rather than what you think they need.
Yeah, I must admit, I think the first test I ever did was Belbin, and then since I've done Total SDI and various others. And interestingly, flagship's red, and I'm very red across all of them. But it's kind of, sorry.
Well, that's interesting, because like I say, TOOJAYS is blue, which is my
yeah, and it is very interesting how when you learn about and there are so many out there, and I found that there's varying answers and varying quality of impact, I suppose, of what they have. And it's as ever, it's horses for courses. And like you say, having that flexibility to have the right solution for the right client at the right time as well, because at one time it might be one and at one time it may be another. It's not something flagship offer. It's something that we would, I'd speak to yourself over and we'd work together on a project like that, because it's not really the niche that I focus on. However, I definitely see the value in them. And personally, very early on my personal development journey, when I learned about being a shaper as Belbin, and I think it's shaper for Belbin, actually. I just want to double check that, but I think it is. And then it corresponded to Red and what have you. And realizing that about myself, and I would say that to anyone who's listening that possibly hasn't done it, it's not black and white, but at the same time, you start to understand others' perception of you. You can understand how you work within a team and how you interact with other people. And having that level, more than anything, the benefit is having the self-awareness, isn't it? Because we can fulfill all the roles, because we are dynamic and agile human beings. But it's just understanding that preference that's so important, and how we just, our triggers and how we'll react to those. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely spot on. The word you hit the nail on the head there is preference. And what is, again, a bit of a bugbear from some organisations that go in and do these psychometric tools, diagnostic tools, is they leave people feeling that they've got a label and that's all they can be. And that's not the case at all. You're absolutely right. It's just awareness around your preference. And it's not so much the colour or the letter type or the way you sit on a grid, etc. It's what you subsequently do with that awareness. As you say, when you're interacting with other people, when you're conscious of how you're coming across, or you're looking at applying a different style to get the better out of a situation. It's just that awareness, really, that those tools, and that's all they are, just tools and frameworks of understanding how you subsequently apply them.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I always find interesting is how you can move amongst them often as well. And how, when I found out that I was very red, my style automatically changed, because I was almost compensating for it. So, yes, it's very interesting. So, brilliant. Being passionate about what we do is so important. I totally agree with that. And the third one that we were looking at was around being consistently adaptable, which I think is an absolutely brilliant one. It's not one that I've come across before, but I totally agree. So, yeah, tell us a bit more about that, Lee.
Yeah, it's almost a contradiction in its title, isn't it? Consistently adaptable. Yeah, I often craft these kind of phrases and then wonder where they come from. But it's a reflection on, again, how we've done business since we started. I've never been one to say no to clients, because I was pretty sure that if the client was after something, even though I couldn't potentially deliver it personally, through my network, through our associates, I was pretty sure that we could offer a solution. So, as I say, instead of saying no, it was always, yep, leave that with me, and adapting and subsequently providing the solutions. But over time, it's evolved more than that. It's about your emotional intelligence. It's about understanding how to adapt and behave differently with different clients, different situations, and different circumstances. And again, that just follows on from what we were just talking about, the relationship awareness that we just mentioned with some of those psychometric tools. Understanding your default, your preference style, but recognizing that's not always the most appropriate style to have in all situations. So having the mindset, the emotional intelligence, the ability to move between those styles and be adaptable is important for those ongoing client relationships. I think that the extreme of that, and sometimes where people get it wrong, is trying to please all the people all the time, which it's not about, but it is just about being flexible. So showing that you're adaptable, you're flexible. Most of the feedback that we get seems to center on that's what clients like about our style and our approach, that we are adaptable. So if they come to us with a brief on X, things change, it turns into Y, that's not a problem. We can just adapt, and we can still work to achieve what they need to do.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute then. I had a bird flying over. I didn't know if you could hear it, so I thought I'd better mute. Yeah, so you know, I totally agree with being consistently adaptable. It's such an important thing. You know, I find that whenever a customer says something, the answer is always yes, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
always yes, and then right, let's build the parachute on the way down, so to speak. But probably not so much that, but more like you say, build it. You know, those skills where we build relationships with customers, it's also about building building our network and having a collaborative mindset as well, isn't it? Because whilst on the one hand people may be a competitor in some elements, actually they may offer something slightly different to what you do. Just understanding how you can serve each other and be adaptable for each other.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I just sort of pick you up on that because I think one of the things that I've learned again from being in business is that actually you can't operate in isolation. And when I first started, I was told, why would you want to set up business? It's a busy market already. There's so many competitors out there. You'll struggle. But actually, once I got over that mindset that they're not competitors, they are potential collaborators, it's a whole different ballgame. And you know that because we've collaborated on a few projects as well. And you'll know that we have within our networks people that we've collaborated with as well. And you benefit mutually. So if we hadn't have done those collaborations, you're potentially limiting the opportunity to get business or to get into organizations. So I fully agree that recognizing collaboration rather than competitors is definitely a way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And one of the things that I thought when you'd mentioned about adaptability as well was we've probably both seen now, and certainly in your time, you'll have seen vast changes in economy and customer needs and what have you, and various changes. And I'm sure that you've had to adapt over that period of time to a great extent, despite your vision remaining the same and essentially that solution remaining very similar the way through. Actually, the way you approach it will have needed to change. But right now we face, and to coin a term that I hear way too much, but unprecedented. We're in an unprecedented time. And I know that we've collaborated previously on a video around the current climate and what businesses need to do and what have you. But I've been quite interested and surprised certainly by seeing some people and some businesses approach, some are burying their head in the sand, some have been automatically very, very adaptable to change. What's sort of your insight on that, Lee?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, again, we've seen similar things, not maybe to this extent over the years. And I think there's a balance to be struck between jumping on the bandwagon, which I see a lot of companies doing, particularly in our field of learning and development, where there seems to be almost a gold rush mentality to get onto online learning where they hadn't done that before. And I think whilst that may be appropriate in some situations, the speed that some organizations are trying to do that, it's not actually beneficial for them, and they just get lost in the masses doing exactly that. The alternative, doing nothing, is also not a strategy as well. Hoping it will pass, hope is never a strategy. So you do need to be aware of what's going on in your market. You do need to be taking the right approaches and adapting accordingly, but it's measured adaptability. Personally, from my point of view, I've always kind of checked what's happening in the playing field, checked what other organizations are doing, but still bearing in mind what the consumer needs. You talk currently, it's very interesting because as we are just coming out of, or it appears we're just coming out of lockdown and organizations going back to work, we're expecting to see organizations re-engage more with the learning and development side of things. Historically, in the last 6, 7, 8 weeks, whilst we have been in the crisis that we've been in, all these organizations that have jumped onto offering online learning and development, still offering the proposition, but just in a different format, maybe haven't been successful because the client isn't buying, because the clients themselves are still focused on their own cash flow, the surviving, their understanding of how their playing field looks at the moment. Yeah. So it's just being responsive in the right way at the right time. And sometimes that means that you resist the temptation of jumping on the bandwagon, just seeing how things play out a little bit before you then apply your adapted strategy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with your outlook on that more, to be honest. Certainly, we at Flagship offer online courses, and we have mandatory online training that we've had prior to COVID-19, and I've seen it as an opportunity to push those. However, actually, it's probably only in the last week or so I've started to see orders, and that's because despite what I offer, the client isn't ready for it. Or for whatever reason, for whatever that is, and it really resonated with me, because as a driver CPC training provider, and part of the mandatory offering that we do, which is obviously quite niche. However, we had the opportunity quite early on to the DVSA, the Driver Vehicle Standards Agency, who underwrite CPC for professional drivers, and the awarding body JALT, they actually approved online training so Zoom training online, and this was unprecedented. It was the first time that they'd ever brought that for us to market, and interestingly, it was quite a challenging thought process for me to go through, because the reality of that is it's a mandated 7-hour training session, online on Zoom. With drivers, and I'm not being disrespectful when I say that a lot of HGV and PSV drivers probably technical skills probably isn't their skill set from a IT point of view. They do have their own skill set, but IT may not be it. And there were demands around the type of device that was used to make sure that it was correct. And there was other restrictions put in place, which were around, if the driver, say, came back from a break a few minutes late, they might have had IT issues, but they might be 6 hours into that 7-hour course, made that investment, made that time investment, but then couldn't get back on for whatever reason and had a panic. They'd have to resit again. So I was sort of like, there's a lot of restrictions here. I'm not sure it feels right. It doesn't feel really right to me. However, a lot of my competitors, or not necessarily people that I see as competitors, but people who have a similar offering and do offer CPC, they're out there, they're doing it. They've dropped their rates really low, and it's almost like you say, a gold rush. And actually, I kind of, and it's interesting, I took a contrarian approach to that. So I was like, right, that's it, I'm not going to do it. And actually what I am going to do is I'm going to ring every single one of my clients, and I'm going to speak to them, and I'm going to explain to them why I'm not doing it. And the key reason behind not doing it, despite all of those limitations I've just mentioned, the other was, transport itself is a highly varied sector. I've got guys who deliver cars on the back of car transporters, through to house removals companies, to tanker companies that move, the crap that's produced by food waste, and then they put it to land. And all of those companies will face their own challenges at this time. One of those car transporters are £250,000, and they're parked up because cars aren't moving. That business owner, the last thing he's thinking about is wanting to buy a £40 per person online CPC course off me.
Exactly, yeah.
But actually,
what they will do, they'll appreciate you having made contact with them, just checking in, just letting them know what is available when they're ready. And that's the key thing, I think.
And that's absolutely right. And the conversation's been around, I'm not offering online CPC because actually, do you know what? I'd rather give my time and advice freely to help you steer through this situation. And if I'm here to help from a compliance point of view, or understanding what it's going to look like, and if you want help with business plan moving forward, I don't know their business as well as they do, but I can offer a second set of eyes. It just felt right. And actually, the feedback I've had is like, Pete, actually, you understand what we do, and that you're not just taking an opportunity to try and sell us more stuff. So I think that's important. So it's a balance, isn't it, when we talk about adaptability, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that credibility that subsequently comes with that, because again, I see a lot of organisations, like you say, trying to get into surviving themselves and dropping their prices and just kind of keeping the revenue coming through, but the marketing or the way they're doing it is maybe not that ethical, or kind of coming across that they are not that concerned about the actual consumer. They're more concerned about their own interests. And as a result, maybe seem to be exploiting the situation. Now, that kind of breaks the trust, that breaks the credibility, and ultimately that kind of will have a long-term impact on the subsequent business going forward, as opposed to what you're doing or did with that client, as you just explained, where offering services for free, showing that you've got a genuine interest in them and their business and their situation, I guarantee you that will have longevity for you in that particular client relationship. They'll respect that, they'll trust that, and they'll engage with you again appropriately in the future.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Lee. Thank you. What with regards, and just sort of before we move on to the fourth area, online training for you, and obviously we don't really do leadership development. If we were to, we'd speak to you about that. So with that, how do you see that happening for you? Because it's a challenge for us right now with our mandatory training, like first aid, for example. I genuinely don't know what that looks like now. There's so much touching mannequins involved, breathing. You've been on one of our courses.
Very good as well.
Thank you very much. But it's it's mind-boggling to actually see how that's going to fit moving forward. So how do you see the landscape changing for you, taking into account online?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, because similar to your first aid courses, all of our leadership, team building was all centered around experiential learning. So again, practical exercises, for certainly some of our team building, actual team exercises as well. So it's an interesting challenge, as you say, going forward. I think there's a lot of talk in the media at the moment about the new normal. And I think this will be with us for some time, and I don't think we'll get totally back to how things were previously. So again, it goes back to adapting accordingly. For us and how that's looking at the moment, I foresee that as a bit of a blend going forward. So as and when the situation will allow us to get back in the classroom, which hopefully it will, we'll still offer that services in the interim and also as an ongoing service, we will be looking at applying online processes or remote learning processes, still offering the same courses. But as you well know, probably more so for my generation, technology has moved on. So the interactivity that you're able to achieve through remote learning has massively increased from when we started 17, 18 years ago. So there is still that opportunity for experiential engagement through the remote learning. And we are putting a series of courses together that enable that interactivity through direct webinar conversations such as this, remote assignments, discussion forums, one-to-ones, all done over webinars, remote systems, video learning. I think there are more and more people that will be now au fait with that as approach to development, where maybe 6 months, 12 months ago, that wouldn't have been on their radar. But this circumstance has forced people to get more comfortable with the use of technology and the use of more remote learning. I don't think you'll totally go away from face-to-face contact, because there's the principle of the hidden learning, and you've probably experienced this from your courses, that actually at the coffee break or the lunch break or in the corridor, the conversations that take place there when you're face to face can be just as valuable as what you're in the classroom. So whilst there's discussion going on the online learning, I think there'll always be a place for face to face. But yes, we are adapting. We're adding more courses online and therefore creating learning on demand opportunities. So our work times being as flexible as they are, people finding the time rather than committing to a set time during a day will enable more flexible opportunities for learning.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. On-demand learning is a fantastic opportunity for people, and I think a blended approach is probably the right terminology to use moving forward. I think there's certainly challenges, certainly for me, and I don't know whether you feel it, but other people I speak to do. And when you are online meeting like this, we're together and we're having a conversation, but there's not the energy flow like there is normally, and that's such an important part of classroom learning and learning from other people and relationship building and building trust as well, like you say, team building. Wow, I couldn't even imagine, I can't even start to comprehend how you would actually land team building specifically online. That must be, that's a real headache to try and overcome.
Yeah, it's well, as well as I do, in terms of just having a meeting with more than 5 or 6 people on Zoom can be quite challenging in terms of mute buttons and kind of people being aware of what's going on. So managing a team like that, it's doable, and we've done it, but it just requires separate focus. So you'll be familiar with classroom training, setting ground rules, or historically setting ground rules about switching mobile phone off, etc., etc. It's just a different kind of environment. So you still set ground rules with regard to the remote learning, just so that you are sure that people understand the process, how to engage appropriately, are familiar with the technology. And once that's there, and once people get more familiar with the use of it, it's not as difficult as it may come across. But yeah, I think blended is definitely the way forward.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so moving on to the fourth one, Lee, living customer-centric values. Such an important part of business, and actually really understanding our customer. There's so many businesses out there where the leader may be fantastic, the business concept may be great, but actually it's all about the customer, isn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, going back to the point I mentioned before, you can't operate as a business unless you have customers. So it's fundamental to ensure that you've got that relationship right with your consumer. And again, that fundamentally goes back to the trust. We spend a lot of time working on our relationships. We mentioned before about listening to our needs of our customers, offering advice and guidance, sometimes off topics that we're not really designed to kind of answer, but just being a sounding board at times to clients enables us to develop that relationship and that connection. I think off the back of that as well, once you started to establish those connections, it's then what you do with that information, that relationship. So CRM system, client relationship management systems are good for retaining data and retaining kind of records, but it's what you are recording, what you're utilizing. So showing a genuine interest in your customer, knowing when their birthday is, what their favorite football team is, what their hobbies and interests are, goes beyond the product that you're actually delivering, and you are creating a relationship. And it's that relationship that stands the test of time. I think we've had clients, customers that we did a piece of work for. I think the longest one we had was a Cambridge architects organization, where we did a piece of work for them in the second year of being in business. Didn't hear anything else from them. And then 12 years later, they came back and said, "Oh, can you just do that piece of work for us that you did 12 years ago?" It's like, wow.
Incredible. Yeah, well done.
But it's that connection. So you make an impact, you make a kind of a trust, a pact, as it were. You deliver high quality, and you may not be able to get repeat business day in, day out, etc. But if you've done the right thing, you've lived your values by being honest, trustworthy, giving the customer what they needed, that stays with customers. And I'm not sure what the record is, but 12 years, we were quite impressed that a client came back and remembered us and the work that we did from 12 years ago.
That's fantastic. That is incredible, really. I think I'd be absolutely delighted if that happens with Flagship in the future. I totally agree with you. We live in the customer value. I used to work for a large vehicle manufacturer, and our vision as a smaller network within the UK, we had our sort of region, and our regional vision was to be our customers' number one partner of choice, and that was the terminology we used it. And obviously, I'm sure you can explore how businesses decide on what their vision and their value statements are and what have you. However, I had a line manager, quite interesting, really. He wasn't particularly. He'd been in the business a long period of time. However, I think he had certain challenges when it came to his interpersonal skills. And I had a customer who I really valued, I got on really, really well with. But we as part of that work, we had a workshop, and we carried out work on their vehicles in the workshop. And actually the margin for error is quite high. It's quite often that something might get delayed, or there might be an issue, etc. And then that may raise a complaint. And part of that process in an organisation like that is actually, we don't talk just about service, but it's about experience over time. So it's this lifetime service that we offer. It's a relationship, and it's always building, and it's almost like a bank balance. Sometimes you're in positive, and actually if things go really bad, you sort of drop into negative. My line manager's thing was he knew that the guy who owned that company, he was into his motorbikes. So he'd just ring up every time something went wrong and he made a complaint. He'd just ring up and go, "Oh, how's your motorbike? You getting out on your motorbike this weekend?" And I'd then get the feedback from the client going, "I couldn't give a F about my motorbike. I just want it fixing."
Yeah, yeah.
And whenever we talk about customers, I have loads of stories like that just come up, and it just makes me chuckle because it's important. It's so important, like you say, that we know and value them individually, and we understand hobbies and what have you. But actually, there are leaders out there in businesses who think that that will overcome delivering a poor service, and it won't, will it?
No, you're absolutely right. And hiding behind that kind of that friendship, as it were, and still delivering a shoddy service is not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
It's almost like the door opener, and the kind of relationship continuer. But you're right. You still have to, and fundamentally, living the values is delivering the service as well. So yeah, I mean, bigger organizations than ours have fallen foul of that in the past, promising and then under delivering. You need to make sure that you are able to ensure you're meeting the customer's needs, but you're still being true. And it goes back right to the very first point about knowing your goals, knowing your values. I was quite fortunate, I think, in terms of our strapline. Came up with about 17 years ago, like I say, enabling for tomorrow's achievements, which kind of summarizes everything that we're about. We are all about enabling others to achieve their goals. And I'm not quite sure the brainstorming session I had to come up with that, but it kind of still resonates now all these years ago, and it fits in with our beliefs and our values and what we're all about.
I find that incredible that it's that timeless, that the strapline and TOOJAYS as a business, 17 years on, that's special stuff. Okay, Brill. So customer-centric value is really, really important. Just moving on, as leader in our businesses, the fifth area about CPD, continuing professional development. So tell me a bit more about that and sort of what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, as I said before, knowing your product is one thing, knowing your service, and that adaptability. Things change all the time. In order to give your clients the best possible solution, then you need to be keeping abreast of current thinking, best practice, legislation even, in order to ensure that you are providing the right solutions in a timely way, in an accurate way for them. And the only way to do that is to continually develop yourself. So yes, there's what most business organisers do is keep abreast of their market, read trade magazines, watch the news, etc. But actually developing your skill set yourself, and ensuring that you've got a sharp awareness of the new approaches, the new styles, as I'm learning as well currently, technology, Zoom is very topical at the moment, but being au fait with those things. If I'm completely honest, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, if I'd have been asked to set up a Zoom meeting with a client, I would not have had a clue. But it's relevant now, and it's how you ensure that you are developing your skills in order to provide the best possible service. Now that can be technical skills, I just mentioned about Zoom, that can be more professional qualifications, getting more awareness, as I say, around models, tools, thinking, gurus. There's so much out there. I think the challenge really is almost prioritizing that, and looking at what is going to add value to you, which you can then subsequently, as a business provider, pass on. Now I know you're a great reader, because I see your kind of reading lists and kind of thinking and stuff. So I guess it kind of goes back to you in terms of what's chosen, or what's the reason you've chosen those particular books to read at this time as part of your professional development.
Yeah, wow, that's there we go. Poacher turned gamekeeper there. Okay, so yeah, I do read a lot. I do read an awful lot. I'm involved in a business book club. I've always, well, for the past 10 years, I've had an Audible subscription, and every month it's a new book, and then I read on top of that too. So I would say I'm not prolific in that it's 1 or 2 books a week, but it's certainly 1 to 2 a month. And how I decide on those is once you open your mind to reading and the development that's available, it's almost like the information, it will just flow by you. But when you're aware of it, you just go, yeah, I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to grab that, and it comes up. And, at the moment, I'm reading a book. It's actually by 50 Cent. I'm probably only about 10 pages in because I keep falling asleep, and that's probably no reflection at all on the book itself. But it's by 50 Cent, and it's about fearlessness. And I'm in the process now of having a bit of a review of the business, and actually Flagship's going to be evolving in the near future a little bit. And I have been a little bit scared. And sometimes it's very interesting how a book will find you just at the time. And I don't even know how that works. I'm not a big, I'm not a big person of faith or anything like that. But for some reason, always when you need a book and it will just be there, and you'll start reading it and you'll be like, oh my God, this is what I needed right now. And I find that absolutely fascinating. I've recently read a couple of good ones. They Ask You Answer, which is a really great book about how, from a marketing point of view, if you give your clients as much information as possible, and actually it's good to look at what competitors do and tell them what competitors are doing and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And every frequently asked questions, certainly in the field that I'm in, where things are quite technical and there's compliance-based stuff, the more I give the customer, the better informed they can be that we're the right solution for them. And which is actually a little bit of a tip on my past background and the training that I'd had previously. I had a lot of value-based selling training when I worked for the blue chip company. But price was never. It was always the last thing that we discussed. So it would be a fact find about what the client needs were, and literally I'd specify a solution to meet all of those needs and why they'd be met. And then the last thing would be the price, because the idea behind that would be, as long as I'd done the correct fact find, literally I've got the perfect solution, and the price then doesn't matter. And actually that book, it just sort of started to change. There was a bit of a paradigm shift for me around actually a real transparent pricing structure, even if it's a from price, to give like an idea that, okay, I will cater exactly what you need, and it will be from this, can help inform a customer. Otherwise, at the moment, the challenge we've got, and like you say, especially with CPD, there's a wealth of information out there on the internet, and some of it is good and some of it is total garbage, and you've got to sift through that. And actually the people get frustrated if they haven't got the information when they need it, because there's such a wealth, they will go somewhere else to find it. And that's probably a big thing for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And going back to the comment that I said before about some of the psychometric tools, that if you've only got one book or one knowledge in your bag, then you become very limited in what kind of advice and the consultancy advice that we get involved with our clients. It limits your appeal. I agree. I think there's so much out there though, and therein lies the challenge, being able to sift through the real value adding ones. So I tend to stick with authors that I know or respect. So Siniek is a good one, as I mentioned before. Lencioni is another one that we often read or I refer to as well. But there's lots of information out there. I also have my governing body, same as you, CIPD. So again, it's kind of keeping abreast of what CIPD, Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, are doing, and making sure that we're aware of current thinking and their tools and their availability to support organisations and individuals as well. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's about finding the time, especially when you're running a business as well. But I think the mistake that a lot of business owners and leaders make is that it's a additional task. It should be part of business as usual, developing your skill set, because it subsequently becomes your proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an important part of certainly for me what I do, and actually it kind of leads me on, because your question around how do I decide which books to read. Well, actually, I have mentors, and I have people that I look up to who are more experienced in business. You're one of them, and I've surrounded myself. We've been running nearly 2 years now, and I've got 2 or 3, 4 people who I look up to. They're more experienced. They've done the things that I'm looking to do, maybe slightly differently. There's variations, but and I then follow. Well, what are you reading, and what have you read, and what do you recommend? And then you start to fill your heads with the information that they've had. And interestingly, just quickly on books still, what I find really interesting is I will revisit books, and I did recently with Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, as my life evolves and as my journey evolves, when I revisit that book, it means something new to me, and I find hidden depth in it that I didn't find previously. So that's a big recommendation, often to actually just revisit books that you've read previously, because you will get new information from there. But this leads on to the final point, the half dozen point, the last one, and that's around getting a mentor, Lee. So tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think going right back to my earliest memories, going back to my school days, I learned very early on that why try and reinvent the wheel? So if someone else has been there, done it, got the t-shirt, why should I try really, really hard, potentially banging my head against the wall, when actually I could just listen and learn from someone else that's been there, been through the pain, has got a wealth of experience. And if they're willing to share that and to stop me making the same mistakes, then why wouldn't I actually tap into that? So I think the concept of having a coach or a mentor has been with me for as long as I can remember, but even more so in business. Again, going into business, although my father ran his small business, I had little awareness as to what that actually involved. There wasn't back in the day that many reading materials saying, there you go, what's an idiot's guide to running a business, I think, as some of the books show now. It wasn't that in place. So yeah, being able to tap into a mentor and actually having different mentors as you evolve. I've had in my career now as a business owner about 5 different coaches and mentors, because they offer different things at different stages of your career, your business, their insights. So it's not about getting one coach and just sticking with that person all the way through. It's looking at what different people can add to you and give you advice and guidance on. And I think that never stops. I'm getting closer and closer to retirement, but I'm still keen to learn from others, still keen to understand their experience and how I can use that awareness and understanding in my situation and my business as well, so that my business carries on. So yeah, always keen to learn from others, and listening to the right people with the right experience is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely, and actually, it kind of reverts back to the CPD, and it's fairly interlinked, because I had an interesting conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about books, and actually some people are actually successful by accident, and it's not through learning from mistakes and what have you. Sometimes there's just a situation where right person, right place, it's success, it's easy, and actually there's no law against those people then writing a book. And sometimes actually there's poorer quality information there. So it isn't always fantastic. However, with a mentor, it's so important that you find someone. You know, in my case, me speaking to you, for example, 17 years, similar game, seen changes up and down financially, different economies, the technical evolution over that time, and still having that sustainability. Well, actually, what a good opportunity for someone to learn from, regardless that I do, you know, we both do training, but the type of training that I do is completely different to a different customer base, then that's fine. But actually, it's just understanding the general principles that can be learned, and learning vicariously from mistakes, because, and this is another thing I've picked up, is that oftentimes when people are new in business, they're going to need to pay for mentoring, they're going to need to pay for coaching, and actually the mind shift that you need to make there is around what's the cost of doing it wrong, because you're going to make mistakes financially. It's going to cost you, it's going to cost you time, but also it's going to cost you loss of potential earnings in the time that you could have been doing it correctly, having learned from that person. So
yeah, I totally agree, and I think I agree with that, and the need to pay for good coaching and good mentoring. On the flip side of that, though, I also think there's an opportunity to kind of pay back. And you know, this is well from conversations that we had originally, and I've spoken to lots of people in similar situations that were starting the business and just wanting some initial advice, and I've given my time freely to give them some initial insights. And subsequently, when they go on to run their business, again, they come back and they then work as collaboration, or give us leads, or give us kind of information that can help us. So I think the payback mentality is useful as well as kind of paid coaching and kind of paid mentoring. And it's interesting you talk about anyone can write a book. I think when I look for a good mentor or a good coach, I look for those that have not just had success, but have also had adversity, and how they've dealt with that adversity as well. Because I think that's the real test, to be able to bounce back from that is crucial. And I think the real learnings come from when things fail, and when you recover from those failures. So I look for that as an additional trait when I'm looking for a coach and a mentor, someone that's been through, as you say, the ups and downs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the old one of the sayings that I've coined recently is you earn or you learn. And sometimes the learning can be as valuable as the earning element, can't it? So,
absolutely, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us today, Lee. Thank you very much. We've been through your six things. Fantastically insightful, so I really appreciate it. So, Lee, how do people find you? How do they follow you moving forward?
Yeah, thanks again. Love the opportunity to talk to you and share some of our thoughts. If people are interested to find out a little bit more about TOOJAYS, then we have our website, toojays.co.uk. We have our resource centre where we have a lot of our e-learning and our materials, which is TOOJAYSHRstore.com. But we're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. We've got a Facebook page, all the social media channels, Instagram, Twitter. We're fairly prolific in terms of keeping up to date on social media. But yeah, get in touch. Love to hear from people if they'd like to find out a little bit more about us. But again, thanks again for the opportunity, Pete. Been a pleasure talking to you.
I really appreciate it, Lee. Thank you very much. And I do recommend people to get in touch with Lee. He's an absolute wealth of information, really supported me on my journey, and has been so supportive. And there's an absolute wealth of information on his website, loads of different online courses, and there's a wealth of books that he's written, and I introduced those at the beginning. So yeah, do go check it out. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll catch up again next week.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate your time. Please do follow me at Pete Rushmer on LinkedIn, or on Facebook, follow Flagship Training UK, and you can find us on YouTube too at Flagship UK.